Welcome, class, to the Week 9 presentation for ME121, Human Anatomy and Physiology. We are getting down to the wire here. We only have this week and next week left of class, which is always very exciting, I think. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed our sessions so far and our time together. 10 weeks always seems like a long journey, but then when we get to this point, it's like, wow, where has time gone? So hopefully you guys have felt the same way, that it has flown by. And hopefully your brains are swelling with knowledge that you didn't already previously have. Let's dive right in. This week we only have one chapter to focus on, always a nice thing, I think. Chapter 17, which is reproduction, and we'll hit the high points here that'll give you the most bang for your buck in terms of your quiz. One term I wanted to start with that you definitely need to be aware of is the term gametes. That term means specialized sex cells. So reproduction involves several processes, including the formation of those specialized sex cells called gametes. Let's look first at the female reproductive system. So the primary sex organs, or gonads, of the female reproductive system are the two ovaries. The narrow inferior portion of the uterus that opens into the vagina is called the cervix. These are all things that definitely you want to remember for your quiz. The uterus. When we talk about the uterus, it's a pear-shaped organ that incubates the embryo during pregnancy. That's its main function. The middle layer of the uterus, because there are 3 layers, is the smooth muscle layer, and it's known as the myometrium. The endometrium is the inner layer of the uterus. The endometrium is lined by a mucous membrane, and the outer layer is known as the perimetrium. The opening of the cervix into the vagina is known as the external os, OS, not OZ. Not pictured on this slide, but important to know is the mons pubis. That's just a mound of fatty tissue that covers the pubic symphysis of females. A pap smear is a test to know. It's used to detect abnormal cells in the actual uterus, in the actual cervix. So the pap smear detects abnormal cells in the cervix. Talking more about our cervix, a condition to be aware of is cervical cancer. Cervical cancer recently has been linked to the human papilloma virus, and that is an important tidbit to know for your quiz as well. You can see here the cervix is outlined exactly where it's at in terms of a cross-section of the female reproductive system. Next, let's talk about ovulation and the process of that. So the menstrual cycle stimulates the production of an ovum each month, and that prepares the uterus for pregnancy. The process of ovum development is called oogenesis. Each ovary consists mainly of connective tissue through which developing ova are scattered. Each developing ovum gives rise to 1 mature ovum and 3 polar bodies. Together, the ovum and its surrounding cos make up the follicle. During the pre-ovulatory phase of the menstrual cycle, FSH, if we remember back to our endocrine unit, hopefully it's ringing a bell, that's follicle stimulating hormone, stimulates the growth of a few follicles in the ovary. During the post-ovulation phase of the menstrual cycle, LH, which is a luteinizing hormone, stimulates the development of the corpus luteum. And here you can see the cycle that makes up the ovulation process. If fertilization does occur, once the sperm penetrates the egg, the fertilized egg at that point is now known as a zygote. Next, let's talk about the male reproductive anatomy. Again, we're not going to talk about every piece of male reproductive anatomy, but we'll hit some of the high points here. Something not pictured on this slide that I want you to be aware of, there are pathways that connect the scrotal and the abdominal cavities, and those are known as inguinal canals. The penis is the male copulatory organ. It delivers sperm into the female reproductive tract during sexual intercourse. The scrotum is a skin-covered bag suspended from the groin. It encloses the testes. Between the tubules in the testes are small islands of cells called interstitial cells that produce the male hormone testosterone. Testosterone is responsible for the development of the primary as well as the secondary male sex characteristics. Sperm mature within the epididymis, which you can see on the slide here, and they're actually stored in the epididymis. Sperm leaving the epididymis next will pass through the vas deferens. One procedure to know is circumcision. That is the removal of a loose-fitting cuff of skin called the prepuce that covers the glands of the penis. Looking more specifically next at sperm, in the adult male, millions of sperm cells are manufactured each day within the paired gonads known as the testes. Follicle-stimulating hormone, we just heard that in terms of the female anatomy, and here it is in the male anatomy, abbreviated often with FSH, stimulates sperm production, also known as gamete production. The process of sperm production is also called spermatogenesis. The tail of a sperm cell is actually a flagellum. The head of the sperm is mostly made up of the nucleus. The ejaculatory duct is actually a very short duct passing through the prostate gland and then opening into the urethra. Semen is considered a very thick whitish fluid. It consists of sperm cells suspended in the secretions that are caused by the accessory reproductive glands. The major difference I want you to remember between oogenesis and spermatogenesis is that in oogenesis, the result is one ovum with those three polar bodies, but just one ovum. Spermatogenesis gives rise to 4 mature sperm. Next, let's talk about prostate cancer. So the prostate, you can see it pictured on the slide because often people are a little bit unfamiliar with where it lies in terms of everything going on in the male reproductive system. Cancer of the prostate is a common disorder for men over the age of 50. There is a test for it. They'll test the PSA, which is the protein-specific antigen. If that specific antigen is elevated, oftentimes that can be an indicator of prostate cancer. Let's talk about fertilization. So the union of the secondary oocyte in a sperm cell is known as fertilization or conception. It results in a new cell called the zygote. The fertilization actually takes place in the uterine tube, also known as the fallopian tube. The male's function in reproduction is to produce sperm and deliver them into the female reproductive tract. The sperm cells must reach the upper 1/3, that's important to remember, the upper 1/3 of the uterine tubes or the fallopian tubes for fertilization to occur. Reproduction is actually regulated by the interaction of hormones secreted by the pituitary gland as well as the gonads. Again, we're seeing a lot of linking here to the endocrine system. So once fertilization has occurred, we have pregnancy. So the placenta is the organ of exchange between the mother and the embryo. Blood rich in oxygen and nutrients is transported from the placenta to the fetus in the umbilical vein within the umbilical cord. The placenta produces the hormone HCG, which signals the corpus luteum to increase in size and release large amounts of estrogens and progesterones. In the second month or during the second month, the embryo is then referred to a fetus, so usually after 8 weeks. Once we get to the point where we are starting labor, some of the first signs of labor include the cervix becoming dilated to 10 centimeters and effaced to 100%. So those indicate the first stage of labor. All right. At this point, I know it was short and sweet, but it's always nice when we have one chapter to focus on. So if you have any remaining questions or concerns or just need additional assistance, know that I'm here if you need help. You know how to get a hold of me, hopefully, at this point. If not, that scares me a little bit. But I'm always here to help you. Do look through the announcements I put in the classroom because especially in weeks 8, 9, and 10, I start really hitting home on our final due dates in terms of when everything is due. And week 10 is a little bit odd. I know we're not in week 10 yet, but week 10 is a little bit different. So I want to make sure you guys have that heads up of when everything is due. Do make sure you look that over. If you have questions once you look at it, reach out to me so that we can clear up any thing that might seem confusing. I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to get all their work in on time. In week 9 and 10, it's especially important to turn your work in on time. At this point, that concludes the information needed for week 9. Everything, as usual, did come from your textbook, so definitely use that as your main resource when you are doing your assignments and quizzes and such. Thank you so much for your time today, and I look forward to seeing your work come through.